Make it stop, Marla, for the love of God. Make it stop. Jared's voice cracked through the drywall like the groan of old pipes. His fists trembled at his sides as he stood barefoot in the narrow hallway, eyes bloodshot, jaw clenched. From beneath the floorboards, beneath the faded rug by the pantry door, the sound rose again, a low, wounded cry that twisted itself into something human by the time it reached their ears. It wasn't a bark. It wasn't even a howl. It was the kind of sound you wake from with your heart pounding, the kind you try to forget by morning, but it came every night. Midnight, on the dot, always the same, always from under the floor. Marla didn't speak. She stood in the kitchen doorway, one hand still gripping the cold metal of the sink. Her nightgown clung damply to her back. The old dog, Juniper, pale-furred and going blind, sat rigid by her feet, ears upright, eyes fixed not on Jared, but on the pantry rug. The house had never felt this small. They had bought it 6 months ago, an aging farmhouse on the edge of Larkspur Valley. Tall wheat out back, nothing but forest beyond. It was supposed to be quiet, a new start after the miscarriages, after the hospital stays, after the slow, unspeakable unraveling of what they used to call love, but peace never came. Only that sound. Juniper had started whining the very first week. Back then it had been subtle, the kind of restlessness older dogs sometimes have when their hips begin to stiffen. But then she began sitting by the pantry every night. No matter how many times Jared moved her away, she returned, like she was guarding something, or grieving something, or waiting. "I'm digging it up tonight," Jared muttered, his hand darting toward the drawer with the tools. "Whatever it is. I don't care if it's pipes, or rats, or goddamn ghosts. I'm ending this." Marla didn't answer. Her face had gone pale beneath the yellow kitchen light. But it wasn't the cry that haunted her most. It was the way Juniper responded. Every time the sound came, the dog didn't growl, didn't bark. She whimpered low and broken, like a memory was playing only she could hear. Jared stormed past her with a flashlight and a crowbar, the beam slicing through the silence like a blade. He yanked the rug back. The floorboard beneath was darker than the rest, older, rough-cut, poorly sealed. He wedged the metal edge beneath the groove, teeth grinding. Juniper began to cry. Not loudly, not wildly, just sadly. Her whole frame trembled as she tried to edge forward, as if pleading. Marla dropped to her knees beside her, wrapping her arms around the dog's neck, tears stinging the edges of her own eyes for reasons she couldn't explain. There was something here. Something wrong. The board cracked up with a sharp snap. Dust exploded into the beam. Jared coughed, waved it away, then angled the flashlight down into the darkness beneath. The silence that followed wasn't comforting. It was thick still, like the pause between breaths, like something holding its breath just out of sight. "What do you see?" Marla asked. Jared didn't answer at first. His face, half lit by the flashlight's beam, had gone rigid. Slowly, he reached down into the hollow, pulled something out, something wrapped in stained canvas, tied with twine that had long since frayed. He set it on the floor gently, but didn't open it. He didn't need to. Marla rose slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. That was never part of the house inspection. Jared's eyes were fixed on the cloth, because someone didn't want it found. Juniper crawled forward, her limbs shaking, nose twitching toward the canvas bundle. Then something neither of them expected. She nuzzled it, not fearfully, not protectively, but gently, like she knew it, like it was familiar, like it had once belonged to her. Jared sat back hard, his whole body folding in on itself. Marla crouched, hesitant. She reached forward, trembling, and slowly pulled apart the twine. The canvas unfurled with the faint scent of rot and iron and dust. Inside, nestled in the folds, was something small, leather, thin, a collar, and beneath it, a faded photo. A girl, maybe 10, holding a golden puppy, both smiling. The back of the photo was smudged, but one line remained. "Don't let her cry alone." That's when Marla saw the second collar. Beneath the first, older, rusted through, the tag still barely legible. "Juniper, if found." Returned to Ellie. The flashlight slipped from Jared's hand and clattered across the floor. Juniper backed away, slowly, and let out one soft whimper, not from fear, from memory. Something had surfaced, something they had no name for yet, something that would change everything. Jared didn't speak for a long time. He just stared at the old photo, his thumb brushing slowly over the edges like he could smooth away the years. Marla sat across from him on the floor, legs tucked beneath her, Juniper resting her head in her lap. The house had gone silent again, but not in the peaceful way it used to pretend. Now the quiet felt informed, as if the walls themselves had finally confessed a secret they'd been holding too long. "I don't get it," Jared murmured, his voice thinner now, as if something inside him had cracked and let the heat escape. If she was Juniper's owner, then how is Juniper still alive? Marla didn't answer right away. She traced the outline of the girl's face in the photo, blonde curls, eyes wide like they trusted everything, including the camera. The puppy, Juniper, but impossibly young, had that same crooked ear, that same streak along her brow. It had to be her, but the picture was decades old. No puppy lived this long. Not unless... "There's no date," Marla whispered. No address, nothing else. Jared shook his head. Just that line. Don't let her cry alone. Juniper let out a breath and nestled deeper into Marla's lap. Her eyes were open, distant, watching something neither of them could see. Marla felt a sudden pressure in her chest, something halfway between grief and guilt, as if they'd dug up not just a memory but something that had waited for them, something unfinished. The next day, Marla drove into town with the photo in her coat pocket. Jared had wanted to come, but after last night he'd barely slept. He sat outside on the porch, Juniper at his feet, both of them watching the dry wind toss up eddies of dust along the fence line. He looked like a man still trying to wake from a dream he hadn't chosen. The town library was nearly empty. It always was. Loxford didn't get visitors, and those who stayed long enough to raise children usually moved somewhere with more promise or fewer shadows. Marla found the local records clerk, an older woman named Evelyn, whose glasses hung crookedly from a chain, and who had an unsettling gift for remembering tragedies most would rather forget. The moment Evelyn saw the photo, her fingers froze mid. Then she looked up, her mouth tightening. "Where did you find this?" she asked. Marla hesitated. "Beneath the floor. In the old Frere farmhouse." Evelyn closed the ledger. "You should have left it there." There was no kindness in her tone, not harshness either, just a kind of weary knowing, as though this wasn't the first time a secret had tried to breathe through the cracks in that house. "She was a sweet girl," Evelyn said finally. "Ellie Carmichael lived there in the 90s. Quiet family. Father drank a little too much. Mother taught piano. But Ellie, she was bright. Talked to the wheat like it could answer back. Used to bring that little pup everywhere." "So it was Juniper?" Marla asked. Evelyn hesitated. "She called her that." "Yes, but the dog vanished. Right after Ellie did." Marla's breath caught. "Vanished." It was late autumn, just before her 10th birthday. Her mother woke up to an empty bed, front door open. They searched for weeks, found one of her boots by the woods, nothing else, and the dog, gone too, like it followed her. Marla felt her throat tighten. "But Juniper's here. Alive, and she's the same dog. Same markings, same eyes. We found the collar." Evelyn looked up again, this time softer. "Then maybe the girl never left." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "You think she died?" Marla asked quietly. "I think the land keeps what's buried in it, and the things we don't finish, they don't either." Marla drove back in silence. The sky had gone the color of unpolished silver, clouds low and mean. Wind pulled at the wheat like it was looking for something underneath. The moment she pulled up, Juniper stood, not ran, stood, as though she'd felt something settle. Jared met her halfway up the steps. "It's back," he said simply. The cry. Midnight again. Marla checked her watch. 11:58. They stood in the kitchen together, arms touching, hearts pacing. Juniper sat by the pantry door. Calm now. Not agitated, just waiting. When the sound came, it was softer, still sorrowful, but less desperate, like it was no longer alone. Jared turned to Marla, eyes damp. "I think it was never about us," he whispered. "This house didn't need owners, it needed witnesses." They stood there unmoving, as the cry rose once more and then fell silent. For the first time in 6 months, it didn't return. Juniper stood up slowly. She walked over to the spot where the board had been pried open, sat, and gently, like an old song long forgotten, let out one single bark. Just once, a greeting or a goodbye. And then she lay down, right there on the floor, rested her head on her paws and closed her eyes. Something had ended, or begun again. They weren't sure yet, but they would stay and they would listen. Jared didn't speak for a long time after the discovery. He sat cross-legged on the cold floor beside the open crawl space, the twin collars still lying beside him, one rusted, one soft with age, both soaked in something heavier than time. Juniper had gone quiet again, now curled in the hallway's corner with her head against the wall, ears flicking to every sound inside the house but never lifting her eyes. Marla watched her husband with a mixture of caution and dread, the kind that creeps in when logic no longer explains what your eyes are seeing. And yet, even amid the weight of the night, neither of them reached for the photo again. It lay on the countertop now, next to the cracked porcelain bowl of wilted pears, its faded image curling upward at the corners like it, too, wanted to be forgotten. But it couldn't be, because now they knew Juniper hadn't always been their dog. Somewhere, somehow someone else had loved her once. A girl named Ellie, a child with a crooked smile and a sunlit yard, who hadn't been mentioned in any deed, any inspection, any neighborhood whisper. The floor had been sealed long before they moved in. Whatever happened had been buried deliberately. "Jared," we finally stood, brushing the dust from his knees with jerky, tired movements. "I'm calling the sheriff in the morning, and say what." Marla's voice was soft, uncertain. "That our dog's been crying every night because someone else buried a memory under our pantry. That she remembers a child we've never met." He didn't answer. Maybe he couldn't. The flashlight's beam caught the photograph again, casting a long shadow behind it, and Marla swore it looked like the child was watching them. That night, neither of them slept. Jared sat on the porch till near dawn, cradling a beer he didn't drink. Marla stayed near Juniper, running her hand down the dog's back in slow, even strokes, feeling every breath as if it might be the last. The house creaked more than usual. Wind pushed against the siding, rattled the shutters, and some old part of Marla's instincts told her the sound was not just wind, that someone or something wanted to be remembered. The next day brought more questions. Jared went into town to the Larkspur Records office. Marla stayed behind with Juniper, who refused to leave the hallway, even to eat. Every few hours she'd stand suddenly, sniff the same patch of floor beside the pantry, and then whimper, like she expected something to emerge from below. By mid-afternoon, Jared returned, but he wasn't alone. An older man stepped out of the truck with him, pale blue shirt tucked into work-stained jeans, boots thick with dried mud. His face was lined with sun and silence. He removed his hat as he stepped inside, his eyes scanning the house slowly like he was walking into a church that had once been his. "This was mine once," he said, voice graveled. "Name's Ellis Marin." Marla offered a quiet nod. Jared looked visibly shaken. He's the one who built this house." Ellis's eyes landed on Juniper. For a moment, something flickered behind his gaze. Not shock, more like recognition. His lips parted, but no sound came. Juniper, still lying in the hallway, didn't bark, didn't whimper. She simply stood and stared. Ellis dropped to one knee. "No damn way," he whispered Junie. The dog stepped forward slowly, stiffly, until her head was close to his knee, and then, with aching gentleness, she laid her chin against it. Ellis's breath caught in his throat. "You're still alive." Jared and Marla didn't move. The silence that filled the room was sacred, carved from old grief and unspoken understanding. "I gave her to my niece," Ellis said finally, looking up Ellie. "She was just 10. Her folks died in a wreck. We took her in. Juniper was her everything. But Ellie disappeared. One night she just vanished. Cops said maybe she ran away. I never believed that." A chill ran through Marla's spine and the floor. Ellis's jaw clenched. "After she went missing, I sealed up that pantry room. I couldn't stand to walk past it. It smelled like her, sounded like her. Some nights I thought I heard crying, but I told myself it was the wind." He looked down at Juniper again. "I didn't bury anything, not knowingly. But this house remembers." Marla felt the nausea rise. "Then what's under there? Who sealed it after you left?" Ellis shook his head slowly. "I sold the place to a man named Creighton. Lived alone, never spoke to anyone. House sat empty a few years after him." That night, Jared and Marla didn't speak much. Ellis stayed in town, promising to come back with old photos, police reports, anything he could find. But the weight in the house had changed, grown heavier, as if now that someone remembered. The silence had grown restless. At midnight, the cry came again. This time, it wasn't just Juniper who responded. From beneath the floor, unmistakably, there was another sound. A second whimper. Not canine, not quite human, like someone was waiting to be found. The living room had never felt so cold. Jared stood by the broken floorboard, one foot instinctively planted between the ripped rug and the hollow below, as if trying to guard something invisible. Marla sat across from him on the edge of the old sofa, her hands curled around a chipped mug of tea she hadn't sipped in hours. Between them lay the canvas bundle, still half open. The photograph had been taken into the bedroom, away from the dog, away from the air that had started to feel too thick to breathe. Juniper no longer sat by the pantry. Instead, she lay curled, up beneath the broken window, facing the woods. Her body was stiff, her tail unmoving, but her ears twitched at every sound, as if she was listening for something. Or someone. Neither Jared nor Marla had spoken much since the discovery. Not even when Marla brought out the local records from her office drawer, yellowed pamphlets, old property maps, a forgotten obituary tucked between mortgage estimates. What they were slowly uncovering didn't make sense. Or maybe it made too much sense, and that was the problem. The house had belonged, long ago, to a woman named Estelle Whitman, a reclusive figure, known mostly for her daughter Ellie, the girl in the photo, a girl who had vanished 23 years ago. No police report had ever confirmed foul play. No body had ever been found. Estelle had died just 2 winters after the disappearance, alone, inside this very house. Local gossip claimed she'd gone mad with grief. Others said she simply stopped eating. And now, beneath their floor, a collar, a name, a sound that started only after they moved in. Marla's voice broke the silence first. "What if Juniper isn't ours?" Jared's brow furrowed. "What are you talking about? We adopted her from the shelter in June. She was a stray number 5. Chip, no records. Just showed up outside the shelter gate. Remember, the volunteer said she wouldn't leave the doorstep for 3 nights. They called her June because of the month." Jared stayed silent. Marla leaned forward, her voice trembling. What if she came back? What if this house wasn't a coincidence? He finally looked up. "You think the dog remembered this place after 20 years? I don't know what I think, but she didn't cry until we moved here. She didn't stare at that floor until we settled in. And that sound, Jared, she wasn't reacting to it. She was mourning with it." He stood, pacing. The flashlight still sat by the hole, casting a sliver of light down into the earth. "So you think this is all some kind of ghost story?" "I think something happened here," she said quietly. "Something someone wanted hidden." Jared's gaze flicked toward the hole again, then down at the wood bundle. There could be more. Marla's face drained. "No, please, not tonight." But he was already reaching for the crowbar again. They peeled back more boards, carefully this time, revealing a deeper hollow lined in dirt and aged stone. Someone had once dug this by hand. A hidden crawl space, maybe root cellar, but what they found wasn't shelves or tools. It was bones, small, crumbled, a shallow scattering near the far edge. Not human, they could tell that much immediately, but the kind that made your breath catch in your chest. A rib cage too delicate, teeth too flattened clean, a collar buckle nearby, rusted to green, a second dog, and tucked beneath the bones, wrapped in flannel that had all but dissolved into dust, was something else. Jared pulled it free with shaking hands. It was a diary, the pages stuck together, but the ink had held in places, and what little they could read turned their skin to ice. "Ellie's been quiet again. She won't talk to me since the well. Juniper still won't leave her side. I think she saw something, or maybe heard it. One wish. Richard never came back. I wish I had the strength to send him away again. But Ellie won't eat, and Juniper keeps scratching the floor by the pantry. I swear she knows something's buried." Marla read it twice. Her voice cracked on the word buried. Then she turned and looked at Jared. "Someone hurt that girl." Jared nodded slowly, and her dog tried to protect her. They looked back at Juniper, who had not moved, but her eyes were open, watching them. Still listening, Jared knelt beside her. He placed the old collar gently on the floor in front of her, and for the first time, she shifted forward, sniffed it, pressed her nose against it like she'd done to the bundle, then closed her eyes. She did not cry that night, and neither did the sound beneath the floor. But neither Jared nor Marla slept. They sat beside her until dawn, the diary open on the table, the photograph laid between 2 mugs of untouched tea. As the light rose behind the trees, soft and gray, something felt different in the house. Less cold, less tight, but far from finished. Because if the dog had come home to remember, then someone else might too, and what was buried might not be done telling its story. Morning came quietly, like the house was afraid to disturb anything. The sun filtered in soft through the lace curtains, touching the old photograph on the kitchen table with a golden edge. Marla didn't speak as she sipped her tea, her free hand resting on Juniper's back. The dog was asleep now, chest rising slow, no longer curled by the window but stretched comfortably on the rug. The same rug that had once covered something so heavy. The diary was closed, not because it no longer mattered, but because they had heard enough. Jared stood at the back porch, staring at the field where the wind stirred the tall grass. He had buried the remains with his own hands. Both the bones of the second dog and the flannel bundle they'd found deeper still. He didn't need a headstone to mark it, just a patch of quiet earth where no one would step, a place where the past could rest, not forgotten, but finally seen. That night, the house stayed silent. No scratching, no cries, just the soft rhythm of Juniper breathing at the foot of their bed. Marla kept a hand on her side all night. At some point near dawn, the dog stirred, not alarmed, not afraid, but gently, like something had passed through her. She rose, padded softly to the pantry door one last time, and sat. No sound followed, no shadow, just a long stillness. Then she turned, walked away from it, and didn't look back. Outside, the wind shifted through the trees, and from somewhere, in the far woods, faint as memory, a second dog's cry echoed once, soft and short, not sorrowful, not lost, just a farewell, the kind you only give when someone's been waiting long enough to be found.